Welcome. My name is Heather, and this website, Seeing Through Art, is a byproduct of a dissertation on Jung's painted process, or what I thought of as a path. He said in Modern Man in Search of the Soul that he so frequently walked this path, this painted process, with individual patients, sometimes referring to them as his advanced patients. And yet he was never able to work it up in a form suitable for publication, to bring this process, or what he said, make this process clear to a wider circle. He'd only done this in a fragmentary way. And so Seeing Through Art gathers these fragments. I imagined it as these mosaic stepping stones of Jung's fragments, primarily from the Red Book as an exemplar, the preface by Sonu Shamdasani, the Vision Seminar and Translate the Darkness for the example of Christiana Morgan, psychologist, artist, who Jung said her art would serve humanity for the next 200 to 300 years, which is to say, an example of a unique individuation journey of her own merit and worth. And also particularly through the Cornwall Seminar, a 1923 seminar delivered by Jung, art historical in nature, to his inner circle. And that period, 1912-13 to 18, in the Black Books, creating the Red Book, the painterly elaboration that extended to 1930. So the Cornwall Seminar is right in that process. And you can see through the lens of that seminar, the transcribed notes by Esther Harding, into Jung's process. So he's speaking historically of art. He says art shows this evolution of soul through history, the implications of iconoclasm, or the prohibition of the graven images, 2- and 3-dimensional, by the church. And in that you get a sense of what Jung is doing in the Red Book itself. Specifically in this website, I bring out 4 of the categories. He said there were 4 categories repressed by the church: nature, creative fantasy, animals or animality, and primitive, so-called, or ancestral humanity. And he speaks of that last category, the ancestors, as Adam and Eve, and you can see that in the website as well. We are playing Adam and Eve from Black Book 4, and we have that note from a footnote from Sonu Shamdasani. So you can see through this lens of the primordial human ancestral perspective, which relates not only to this path as it is now, but this path as a path of remembering a return to what I imagine in this website as the garden, to Eden, this mythic place of ancestral origins, a circumambulation of the image through the dark night of the soul, in which we try to return in effect. And that brings me to an insight that I will elaborate in different ways, but it's this sense of what is known as cartographic knowledge. It is tacit or proprioceptive knowledge. Proprioceptive knowledge is used by David Bohm in the sciences, Risa Capiro in somatic knowledge and scholarship, as a knowledge of the body. You can navigate in the dark according to this proprioceptive knowledge. Tacit knowledge, first coined by Michael Pagliani, Wendy Wheeler, different people, Clark Moustakis, have used it in a way that's very reminiscent of the soul and the soul's use of information, the enlightening thought that comes from the body. Another point, Jung spoke of the soul going within him and visibly throughout the day, allowing him to see the whole in the parts. So there's this paradox always of the parts as a whole, the whole in the parts. That's very much what tacit knowledge is. It's knowledge that is hard to put into words. It is nonverbal creativity of a body or a body of art. And the textual knowledge, again, alphabetic, verbal knowledge, that is a part of tacit knowledge is word as image, as in imaginal research or knowing. And this will be language in different ways throughout the website, but largely it's right hemispheric knowledge based on word as image. So We have reading and writing, academic scholarship in the traditional sense is mainly isolated within the left hemisphere as verbal. The part that's processed in the right hemisphere, which is holistic, again, seeing the whole in the parts, putting the pieces together to see the whole, which is how we view art. This part processes metaphor and symbol. So verbal language, that is image, metaphor, and symbol, is a part of this tacit, proprioceptive, imagistic knowledge. And it's explored through cartographic knowledge. Cartographic knowledge, as you can tell from the title, is map making. It is a navigation of the body. Again, proprioceptive knowledge allows you to navigate in the darkness, they've found in studies. This is a way of finding a center within your body, and almost like a compass, if you think of a mandala, and a compass as a mandala that allows you to navigate an imaginal terrain or landscape. This is a different way of seeing and orienting within and without. And the reason I'm bringing it up is in publishing, working this knowledge, this art-based research that Jung did with himself in the Red Book, following his soul on this painted path, but also with his patients who he so frequently walked this path with. I'm suggesting that this navigational compass-like centering, recentering, or return is what allows you to do that. And I have created the imaginal landscape of this website as what I was told by my soul in active imagination would be the most suitable form of publication, to bring it to a wider circle. In effect, I am trying to do what Jung said he could only do in a fragmentary way. And I am doing that because of my own soul calling. So I want to give you that lens so that you can perceive where I'm coming from in walking this path. And of course, I'm inviting all of those. It's an archetypal path. It's also an individual path. But I am reiterating Jung's valuation of this as an essential journey. Jung said that he found it invaluable, as does his patience. And so I want to bring this path to a wider circle, notably in a website that is the circle and circumference of the earth itself, in a platform that mediates or bridges antiquity and modernity, allowing us to move in the circumambulation of the image, in which we return to the past and the present as we circle around this image of the globe, this image of time itself as circuitous. So I'm going to bring you to the beginning of my own experience walking this path. I'm an artist, I'm an art historian. I had an art history and a psychology degree. I had not read Jung, though I'd studied theosophy and anthroposophy, which bring together a lot of what Jung brought. They were contemporaneous movements of Jung's time. I'd studied mysticism, Gnosticism, alchemy, mandalas, a lot of the same content, but from different angles and perspectives. And I was out in nature on my laptop about 6 years ago, and I heard this oracular voice, this oracular experience saying, people have forgotten how to learn through art. And to contextualize, I have a modern art degree, ironically, but my heart is in the antiquities, in sacred indigenous practice as a way of knowing, art as a way of knowing. And so that's a lot of what I've explored on my own. So that's part of why I think I had this calling. People have forgotten how to learn through art. And at that time, I looked on the scroll bar on the right where you get the advertisements. And for the first time, I noticed an advertisement from Pacifica Graduate Institute. And in what I experienced as a synchronicity, an inner and outer, a causal correspondence of meaningful events, I sat next to a friend 2 or 3 days later who is the head of the consciousness department at a local college. And she was teaching a year-long book on the Red Book, which was recently published. And she recommended Pacifica. So given my orientation and navigation in my life through these kind of constellated synchronicities, I was reading the Red Book a week later, applying to Pacifica. And that's how I got to this place particularly. The other points that I want to narrate in terms of charting my path is that early on in reading the Red Book for my application, again, having not read Jung, I was struck by this salient point that I knew right away would be a focalizing lens for my dissertation, which was Jung speaking to Elijah about this radical multiplicity of soul. Elijah, whose name means my God is Yahweh. So he's an embodiment not only of thinking type, but also of monotheism and that perspective, overcoming the Sumerian queen Jezebel and Ahab and the gods and goddesses they represented. So, predictably, Elijah does not like, cannot think this multiplicity. Near, nearest, far, furthest, many in one. A spirit as large as the world, a pagan horde, a cry of the wilderness. A call, Elijah said, that his ancestors heard, but that he knew not. So, Jung responds to Elijah's lament that he does not like this multiplicity and it is not easy to think or comprehend. Jung, it is not to be thought, it, the soul. It is to be viewed. It is a painting. This is part of the lens I'm applying here in seeing through art. If it is to be seen as a painting, what is that? And I want to give you just a couple of hints as I see it to help you narrate and navigate this website. When you view a painting, you see everything at once, the whole and the parts as a whole. It is right hemispheric in terms of how it's processed, even though I realize most of our functions are bihemispheric to some extent. When you see a painting, as James Hillman of archetypal psychology, part of seeing through as psychologizing is from him, in the Soul's Code preface, he spoke of this gestalt, the artist, Picasso saying essentially the artist is all at once, everything there together, simultaneity, the acorn and the oak. And he said, Hillman, that every decision, every paint applied over years, over the duration of the process of art is there in the product. There is a simultaneity in which you perceive it all at once. This is a part of viewing a painting. How do you view in this holistic, again, tacit, proprioceptive way? Like a map, how do you see how everything connects? How do you map that terrain? And in a painting, there are underlayers. And there's a compositional difference, the foreground, the middle ground, the background, these different ways of mapping in terms of the palimpsest, like layering of the paint over time and space in a sense, and this collapse of time and space in viewing it. The second instance I want to bring in to help illustrate and animate viewing a painting, viewing the soul as a painting, is from Memories, Dreams, Reflections, towards the end when Jung is speaking of Emma Jung, his wife, after her death, and he sees her as in a vision of a portrait in which all of the 53 years of their life together are there. He refers to it as a completed individuation, the only time I remember seeing those words. Usually an individuation is a path that extends ever onward to the event horizon so that it is ongoing. But this was all at once, the 53 years of their time together as a completed individuation. That's another way to see and feel into what is it to view the soul as a painting. And the final one I want to narrate as a piece of this puzzle. There's this primary way of moving, which is remembering. Remembering the hidden, repressed images or memories. Those 4 categories of the Cornwall seminar. What is it that is repressed? If this imaginal way of knowing has been repressed as creative fantasy, as a way that Jung spoke of as the secret and effectiveness of art, to return to a participation mystique, a collective way of being as the artist was higher and collective humanity, evolving the human psyche through the ages, as Jung said. If we're going to return to that, we must remember, my soul said, people have forgotten how to learn through art. We must remember the pieces to see this as a whole. Again, this whole cartographic knowledge. Part of that is expressed in a website that has many different pieces within a whole. And the last part of this puzzle I want to put into place is that in my doctoral dissertation, I created an illuminated manuscript. I put together the fragmentary written statements Jung alluded to. I've only written this up in a fragmentary way, and I assembled them as stepping stones upon an imagistic path. And then I walked that path in my own way, as Jung said, to see from the inside and to experience and feel and know in this holistic sense what it was to walk this path. I then taught this path at a collegiate level in workshops, and I made the website as a last piece of that puzzle. And the reason I chose a website as the most suitable form of publication was that my soul very explicitly said at a pretty early point in my active imagination, the activation of the image in dialogue with the art, said that a website would be the most suitable form of publication. So you have this large website, Seeing Through Art, with an extended amount of content. It is a huge terrain to navigate. You have videos, and there will be more and more videos that I've created. I have almost 100 videos that will be uploaded at different points. Some of them very impersonal in terms of more of a presentation in which I'm at a retreat center and I am giving a more formal lecture. Some of them very informal like this, where I'm speaking to you, painting, speaking while painting, trying to give you a sense, an intimate portrayal of the process. There's all of that content, which is as close to the embodied sense of the image that I could get. Jung spoke of betrachten, this activation, seeing from animal husbandry with this sense of activating the image, again embodied in the body and a body of art. Jung said, not for no reason did they call it a great work of art, speaking of alchemy. Not for no reason is it called a body of art. And I wanted to get at being able to sense in this multisensory capacity what it is that I'm talking about, transcending words as images. Video is the best sense of how I could do that. But I've also created this extensive landscape in which you move, trying to emulate my own experience in active imagination and creating my own couple 100-page illuminated manuscript, which was very much about caverns in the chthonic realm, descending and reconnecting, going through forests, going through caves, and entering out into different landscapes. So you will connect through links to different places. There are longer white papers, which is in the technological field a way of combining visual and verbal information together in something paralleling the genre of the illuminated manuscript. There are all different ways of knowing, and again, this landscape is so immense and it has these Warren-like tunnels of connectivity that my best direction for you is to almost close your eyes, learn to see in the dark, learn to lose your center and get lost, to facilitate a recentering or a return to the center of the soul and the self. There are all these beautiful examples in art, whether it's the Matrix with Neo, art throughout the ages, the blindfolded one who must look within to gain insight, the disorientation that allows a reorientation, the expulsion from Eden in which we, humanity, have had to move through the collective dark night of the soul, learning to see in the dark and navigate, wander in the Egyptian darkness, as Jung spoke of it. That is not a perfect map that I am giving you. Essentially, I'm saying in this cartographic way of knowing, you are having to create your own map. The map, just like the artwork, is in you. Jung said you are creating yourself. This path is, of course, you. You are the path, the pathway. You are the art, ultimately. And you have to gain this inner sense of your own terrain of being and essence based on your own centering and a compass within. So I invite you to play, this instinctive play, explore. Have no worries if you get lost. Know that that's a facilitation of this process. And enjoy. This was an invaluable process, as Jung spoke of it, a way of regaining and remembering your soul. And so we return to this archetypal, forgotten way of knowing, learning through art.